The immune system is what defends people from harmful microbes and diseases such as the cold. Methods of defense against harmful bacteria is skin, hair, eyelids, and mucous endothelia. If people did not have these methods of defense against harmful bacteria, they would be getting sick much more often than they already do. Inside the body, there are leukocytes, also known as WBCs, which find and destroy microbes through the method of phagocytosis. Microbes that come in have antigens that puts them apart from the rest, which lets the WBCs know that this is an invader. T cells are made in the bone marrow, just like red blood cells, but they are stored in the thymus gland. They find the invader, which is identifiable by the antigens it has upon it. There are 4 different kinds of T cells: the helper T cells, which detect and ID the invader; the killer T cells that kill the cells that have gone infected to prevent disease from spreading; the suppressor T cells, which stop the killing once the invader has been destroyed; and the memory T cells, which keep a memory of the microbe, so that they can be quickly identified when or if they enter the body again. This is how vaccines work. When a weak version of a disease, such as the flu, is put into a person, so the next time the full virus comes, the memory T cells can quickly identify the virus and the killer T cells can kill it. B cells are lymphocytes. They are also produced in the bone marrow, but are also released from the bone marrow rather than the thymus gland. They make antibodies from the information that they have collected from the T cells. How it all happens. A microbe comes in and the macrophages try to kill it and get rid of it. If the macrophage is overpowered or needs help, it calls the helper T cells through lymphocyte. The helper T cells ID the invader with antigens that it receives, so that it contacts the B cells to produce the antibodies to get to the microbe so that they can mark it. The killer T cells come to destroy the initial invader, and the macrophages come back and finish it all up. Once the invaders are dead or destroyed, the suppressor T cells come in and break the fight. Then the imprint of this killer is kept in the memory T cell so that it can remember and detect the threat quicker the next time it comes. Antibiotics are given to patients to speed up the process of destroying bacteria by the immune system.
In this video, the immunity process is represented throughout the cartoon in various ways. Firstly, Mr. Bean would be represented as the microbe trying to enter the body, and when Mr. Bean tries to retrieve some of the cash from the ATM and gets declined a few times, that shows our hair, eyelids, mucus, preventing the microbe from entering our body. When Mr. Bean finally is able to enter the ATM by breaking through, that is when the microbes enter our body through an open wound in the skin, also known as a hemorrhage. After Mr. Bean enters the ATM, the police officer is the first one to come in contact with Mr. Bean, which in our body would be represented by macrophages being the first one to the scene of the microbe. The alarm that is first set off when Mr. Bean enters the ATM is represented in our bodies as the antigen marker on the microbe itself, which helps the leukocytes identify that the microbe, Mr. Bean, is an invader. When Mr. Bean is in the vault, a second alarm goes off, which can be represented in our bodies as when the helper T cells call the killer T cells for help. The killer T cells being the police officers who show up, and the helper T cells being the camera inside the vault, which identify the microbe. In the situation of an actual bank robbery, the footage of the camera, helper T cells, would be the memory T cells, which remember the microbe so it can be quickly identified and destroyed. Also, when the robber takes the money from the bank, the money dye packets that are put in some of the bags of money in banks would be the B cells, and the dye that explodes onto the robber would be the antibodies that attach to the antigens of the microbe. When this happens, the killer T cells, represented as the police, which go after the microbe/robber. The lymphokine is represented as the walkie-talkies that the T cells, guards, and police would use to contact each other. After it is over, the suppressor T cells are when the investigation and cleanup occurs after the robbery, and the memory T cells are the footage that are used to hold the imprint of the antigen or robber.